Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest today. We have from Rhode Island, Tom Brillat. I said it correctly. And he is what would you say, Tom? Welcome. Would you say you're kind of a new author? Right?
I'm certainly a new published author. I've been writing for a long time.
A published author, new one. This one, boy, it's called Ekaterina.
Ekaterina.
And she's Russian. And boy, what a story this is. Did you do the cover? Or no?
I had an artist do it with Steve's help. I had a choice.
Yeah.
And I love the cover.
Oh.
Because I didn't bring in a photo. I'll have to show you at the end of who Ekaterina is based on.
This is based on a true story. And at the back of it, just briefly, it says, Ekaterina is the saga of a precocious child who matures into a strong-willed, beautiful, and talented white Russian emigre who fights for the freedom to live her own life amidst war, bigotry, personal loss. This girl has been challenged from the moment she's been born. Give us a rundown of the book.
So it takes her story from growing up in a small village in western Russia in between St. Petersburg and Moscow. Her father gets in some trouble by speaking too vociferously about the state of the government. And they wind up essentially being banished to Siberia. So she experiences the train ride, Trans-Siberian Express, all kinds of encounters on their trip across the continent. And they meet some interesting characters along the way. A young lady who becomes her best friend named Daria. And they're talked into not staying in Siberia, which would have been against the rules. And they escape into Harbin, China.
Yeah.
Where she does most of her growing up. Most of her childhood and youth is spent in Harbin, China, where she matures. She has some troubles and problems with some men. She's a little bit precocious and adventurous. And as the Japanese this is the 1930s now, the Japanese invade Manchuria, which is where Harbin, China is, in Manchuria. So there's all kinds of conflicts between political and military officials, the Chinese nationalists, the Chinese communists, the Chinese gang warlords, the Japanese military, the Russians who are in China because they basically controlled the railroad through there. And they move. She moves multiple times from Harbin to Shanghai, where she's a late teenager in her 20s in Shanghai, as the Japanese are still moving further south in China. She has to engage in some activities that are less than pleasant to survive. Along the way, she loses her father, she loses her grandmother, and she falls in love more than once. In Shanghai, she's in love with a French army officer. The war starts back in Europe. He gets patriotic fervor and wants to join de Gaulle, so he leaves, and they become engaged. So she ultimately leaves. She stays behind, but she and Daria raise enough money to finally go and join him. And they have enough money the first week of December 1941. And they're on their way. Their ship gets diverted when the Japanese start to bomb, both in, it's December 7 in Pearl Harbor, but it's December 8 in Manila. She gets stuck in Manila, in the Philippines throughout the war. She spends her war years there. At the end of the war, she meets the gentleman who she marries, named Charles, who they get married, and ultimately they come to the United States, where she is ostracized or not looked upon because Charles is a recent widower. He apparently did not mourn the loss of his first wife long enough. She's not accepted into the family. They move from New Jersey. But Charles is also a Russian. And so there's two Russians decide to move south to Atlanta, Georgia in 1947.
Yeah. Weren't there a lot of Russians or is there just Georgia in Russia? Weren't there a lot of Russians in the American state of Georgia, or am I wrong?
There were some. There
Yeah.
were certainly some. They had an expat group that met in Atlanta that she became a part of. She has a number of issues with dealing with the FBI, dealing with local officials, being during the communist push, the Joe McCarthy era of the House Un-American Activities Committee, if I said that right. And she's caught in the middle. Ultimately, she and her husband Charles passes away. She has a number of good years. She meets someone else.
Wow, she was a busy girl.
named Peter. They become really. They become each other's special other, for the most part. Ultimately, unfortunately, she develops dementia
Yep.
and passes away. And I'm not sure I want to tell the ending.
No, her daughter, Kayla. Was it Kayla? Who was Kayla? Her friend or her?
Katya was her nickname,
Okay,
and
because
her friend, her father was Kolya. See, the Russians, the Russians, it's tricky. Her father's name is Nikolai.
yeah.
Nikolai's nickname was Kolya.
Yeah. Now Katya was.
Her name is Ekaterina. Her nickname is Katya.
So was Katya her daughter? Did she have this child or no? 8-year-old Katya, was that her?
No,
Okay.
8-year-old Katya is her.
Oh, that's when she was when she was little. You drew. This is so interesting. You drew on family stories and personal memories. Tell us about your grandfather.
So the story ultimately, this Ekaterina, the character of Ekaterina, is based in large measure on my grandfather's second wife. I never knew my natural grandmother. She passed when my father was in high school. I grew up knowing Aunt Helen. She wanted to be called Aunt Helen. And as I got older, she would share stories. When I was younger, she would sing songs and Russian folk songs and things like that. And as I got older and more mature, she would tell me more mature stories of her own life. Of course, this is my recollection of her stories.
Yeah.
Her stories, of course. I never heard the other side of her stories. Nonetheless, they were fascinating to me. And I lived in South Carolina and Metro Atlanta for a total of 6 years.
Yeah.
So where I saw her more often, I learned more about her, and that's what's in here.
We are talking with Tom Brillat, Thomas J. Brillat, Thomas H. Brillat. He is the author of Say it again.
Ekaterina.
Ekaterina. Okay, this is based on a true story about this Russian lady. How can they go about getting your book?
Well, it can be found on Amazon under Ekaterina and my name, Brillat. On Amazon is the easiest way to track it down. You can find it on my website. With a direct link. It's www.tombrillat.com. It's in a couple of local bookstores in southern Rhode Island right now. Wakefield Books being the most prominent down there. In the early stages of getting it out to other places, but that's the easiest way to get it right now.
Also on the back of his book, get a real treat when you read the back of this because it really takes you right into what's going on. This person reviewed it, and she said, what reading Ekaterina has done for me is revitalize my interest in world history, especially as seen through the eyes of a young girl. Mr. Brillat has made it easy and interesting, all but scary, to imagine myself as Ekaterina. And then there's another one here. Ekaterina will hold your heart captive from the minute you meet her as an innocent girl in her beloved village of Valde, through her harrowing experiences, adolescence, and beyond. And she's fighting for survival, navigates heartbreak in China and Shanghai. You'll be caught up in the many ways war claims its victims. What does your family think of this historical book?
I think they're just simply proud that I did it.
Yeah.
My father, who is still alive in his mid-90s, I did have to keep reminding him it's fiction, Dad. It's a novel.
Yeah.
It's 80% I had data, 20% I had to fill in some gaps.
What does he think? What does he think?
He loves the book.
He did read it.
Yes,
How
he
about,
read it.
How about
That
your
was-
mom? Is she still here?
Yes, my mother loved it. My mother loved it. My sister, everybody likes it. I'm getting positive feedback. It makes me feel good.
How about your kids? Your grown kids? because.
No, only because they are both extraordinarily busy, and I don't think they've read it yet.
They've got kids too. You've got how many grandchildren?
I only have one.
That's okay. It's a start.
Only one. Well, we're pleased that we have the one. We didn't think we were going to have any, and when we did, that's when I stopped my full-time employment.
You stopped your full-time employment.
Yes, I did.
And you're concentrating on writing.
I've been writing a lot, and this was the story that I've wanted to share for a very long time. I was an oral storyteller for a while. I had friends said that I needed to make an epic oral tale out of it for a 2-hour tale with an intermission in the beginning. I worked on that for a long time, and I said, there's too much stuff here. I can't get it done in 2 hours. It was more than I wanted to share. I've been in a writing group for many, many years, and they said, write it.
Yes.
Write the book.
Yep.
So, of course, then once I wrote it, they said, you got to publish it. So,
Which writing group do you belong to? In Rhode Island, correct?
yes, it's the Neighborhood Guild Writers Group in South Kingstown.
Was this published in time? You know that, he used to run the Rhode Island Authors Group. Every December there would be that huge authors fair. Have you made it yet into that one?
No, it didn't. It came out later in the spring.
You'll love it. I think you'll enjoy it. It's extremely, for someone walking in as a customer, myself, I knew a lot of the authors, but still, I was absolutely overwhelmed with how many people were there. I've never seen anything like it. Every single table and aisles. It's fun, and you never know who's going to be beside you.
No, I'm sure that's true. There are a lot of
I don't
lots
think
of writers. They're everywhere.
Oh, you got everyone there. I saw everyone from sci-fi to children's books to novels based on history.
That's why I've been talking to the artist who did my cover.
Yeah.
I have 3 children's books really ready to go.
You have children's books?
Plus another novel. So I got to decide which ones I want to work on first. In the meantime, I'm trying to publicize this, so it's
Well,
kind
we've
of.
got to get you out there, for gosh sake.
I know.
Because you're going to just end up skipping over a bunch of really great books to get to the next one.
Well, like I said, I was an oral storyteller,
Yeah.
and a number of those stories, I picked 3 that I thought would really make good books. So those are the ones that I've been playing with now, and I need to find the right artist and just a little bit of tweaking there.
Children's stories?
Yes, children's stories.
What? So you're also a storyteller. Where were you doing this? At schools? At libraries?
Yes, all the above. For adults, for children, all age groups, all kinds of settings.
Now, when you left high school, you went to which college?
I went to the United States Naval Academy.
Okay, you went to the Naval Academy. Then did you say that you also went to college or university and majored in, oceanic?
I have a graduate degree in marine affairs from the University of Rhode Island.
So you did that for how many years? Uh-oh.
Now we're on to that list that's in the
Yeah.
long list. I worked in seaports. I was the commercial harbor master in Charleston, South Carolina, which is a large container port.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful job. I liked that a lot. I was a ground, and so that's a transportation industry type thing on the maritime side.
Yeah.
I was also supervisor for Flying Tigers Air Cargo in Boston. Amongst other things.
You've done all kinds of things then.
I really have, yes.
But you know what? That's good. I relate to it big time because not everybody's like that. Sometimes I envy the people who just do what they wanted to do. They got out of high school and did it. I don't know. I don't understand that. It's like, but I want to try this. I want to try that. So you've got how many books coming up, maybe? 2 children's.
I have 3 children's and a novel that's written.
The novel is written.
It's written.
Well, hang on till we get you up.
I know. That's why I'm waiting. I'm patient.
Oh, my gosh.
And I've started the 3rd novel.
What's the 3rd novel, briefly? What's that about?
Well, you didn't ask me what this first one was.
Well, yeah, we've been talking
so
about...
the third novel uses similar characters that I use in the other novel that's already written. It's about I take, if you recall, well, you may not recall this, but in fact, in 1961, I think, maybe 62, there was an escape from Alcatraz that succeeded.
The 3 guys, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there's an escape. We don't know what happened to them.
No.
They were never found. Their bodies were never found. No. And then in 1971, 91-ish, 2-ish. There was D.B. Cooper who jumped out of the airplane.
Yes.
Okay. And then in 1980s, there was this mountain man who killed a couple of guys out in Idaho. And there's an Indian reservation in Idaho that in Washington State that is really very closed to the public. So I have a group of a river rafting company people who are who go training for activities, and of course they come across some history that crosses.
So this is all sort of, the next novel is going to be based on truth again.
To an extent.
That Alcatraz thing has always fascinated me. I'm like, how did they survive? And are they still alive?
Right, maybe they're probably too old.
I don't know. When did it happen? What year?
1960, and they were 30 years old.
Oh, they could be alive. Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? Oh, yeah. At least one of them might be, you
They
know?
could be.
Well, okay, so then we've got the children's books, the 3 children's books. What age group are you aiming for?
Probably 4 to 8.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I have one called Herman Learns a Lesson. Herman is a firefly who strays too far, not listening to his parents' instructions. He's trying to show off to Angela, doing aerobatics and tricks and things. And
So it's a firefly, then he's the head of the story here.
yes, Herman Learns that he's a firefly.
What made you think of
And
that? That's great.
My writing group doesn't. They always ask me where do I get these ideas from, and I can't. They just show up.
Now, see, that's the way it needs to be. You just need to become, impulsive, or whatever you want to call it. They just kind of hit you. Now, again, we're talking with Tom Brillat, and he is the author of Ekaterina, right? And this is based on a true story of a Russian lady who went through one hell of a lifetime situation. Again, Tom, how did they get a hold of your book?
The best way is on Amazon at Ekaterina, and my last name Brillat, Brillat. They can find it there. It's also available in Wakefield Books in Southern Rhode Island, and hopefully soon to be found in other book locations as well. That's the easiest. Or on my website, www.tombrillat.com.
Now, will you be bringing a copy 1 minute up the road to our brand new library building that has the dedicated local authors section? Another great way.
I'm still trying to learn exactly what a definition of a local author is.
You're local. I mean, as long as they use that word, but I've had people on here from New York City, so it's fine. You're fine. It's just beautiful. It's called the Upton Center, 1 minute up the road. This used to be the library.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, and they just moved up there. You'll see it. You cannot miss it. Beautiful. You walk in, you say, I was just on Be My Guest. They all know they used to be downstairs, and here's my book to donate. And this is another way, a great way for people to, maybe they watch the show if they're around here. If they're out of the country, well, they'll have to order it. But another great way for people to borrow it and get to know you.
Yes, well, that I am. I'm setting up a number of different things. Next week I'm going to be on a podcast. Then I have a number of library senior center visits set up, mostly in October.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be doing an event in Maine. We're going to Maine.
What part of Maine are you going to?
My wife's family is from Brooksville, Blue Hill, Maine, down east Maine.
Anywhere near Portland?
No.
That's where I was born. Yeah, so Portland.
Much farther east.
So you're getting around a little bit, and that's a good beginning. That's a good beginning. People, a lot of authors will say, well, why are you sending me to senior centers? I'll say, because they read, and because they also have grandchildren. When your children's books start getting published, I'll tell you again, aim for senior centers because they love it. They love it. I had a new author on here many years ago, and I'm her publicist right now, again. And I said, I want you to go over to the Mendon Senior Center. And she said, why? Cisco. Within an hour with her presentation, she sold 10 of her brand new books.
Wow, that's great.
But see, it's so possible. There's a lot of the independent bookstores are opening up everywhere. Couples, moms and pops, and they're popular because all right, we've got the big places, but
yeah, no, they're really very nice, and I like them. There's one great one down in Mystic, Connecticut, where I spend a lot of time. I volunteer regularly at Mystic, Connecticut. I was on staff there for...
Where at Mystic do you volunteer?
At Mystic Seaport Museum.
Oh, you're at the museum. That's another great thing that you're doing that interesting.
A maritime historian. I've sailed on square rig ships.
And then you were on the Boston Tigers too, right? You just
Flying Tigers, the air freight company out of Logan Airport. Yeah.
You have been all over the lot. Have you ever lived on the West Coast?
Yes.
Oh my God, where did you live?
I lived in California, in the Bay Area.
What made you come back this way? Family?
I got out of the Navy and I came back. My family was on Long Island. I came back, but then I wasn't there very long, and I wound up sailing. I met a lady in Newport, Rhode Island, while I was sailing, and
that was it.
And that was a long time ago, and we've been together ever since.
What does she think of your book?
I don't know that she's read it.
Really?
No, she doesn't. She supports me a lot in everything, but no, it's not her thing. She doesn't read my stories. She doesn't.
Let me talk to her. Hey, read your husband's book.
That's okay.
Oh my God. Well, do you think she'll be more inclined for the children's books? She's got grandchildren now.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt when I produce those that
she can read to your grandchild.
Actually, he's he's going to be too old. He'll be too old for them. But
how old is he now?
He'll be 8 in a couple of weeks.
Well, there'll be more coming along, maybe. Another little baby.
No.
No? You don't think so? So you got an 8-year-old. I'd always tell this story, but I learned to read in first grade. When did you learn to read?
I was pretty young when I was
first grade was it when I was, okay. And my mother would, do you remember the Mother West Wind, Thornton Burgess, Jimmy Skunk, and Grandfather Frog?
No, I don't know them.
Mother West Wind stories. Well, my mother used to read those to me at bedtime. She'd be the frog. She'd be
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so I was 8 years old finally, and one night she just said, Jan, you're old enough to read to yourself. And that was it. But I didn't want that to end. I thought that was...
Well, it's interesting. I also ran an adult education program for 13 years.
Over what now? What was it?
Adult education, learn to read, get your GED, English language. ESL. I ran, yeah. And one of the challenges, one of the things you learn about doing that is that stories are the best way to learn something. It shouldn't stop when somebody goes from elementary school into the middle school.
I know it. They're all born, I think, with this thing in their hand.
Well, now, yeah.
And the computer, I have 2 little grandchildren, and they're adorable, and I have given them books as gifts.
Yes.
I think they'd rather go on, and it breaks my heart because I'm like, oh, don't ever stop reading a regular book. My father taught me, he says, you could be in a wheelchair, you could be, in that type of situation, but keep this going. Read.
Yeah, I love to read. I'm always reading books.
Were you raised around books?
Oh, yes.
Your parents?
Yes. Oh, yeah, always reading something.
Yeah, my father had a library full of stuff. I mean, you grew up around it. Sometimes it doesn't always work, though.
No, sometimes it doesn't. You're right.
It doesn't, really. Now, again, we're talking with Tom Brillat, Ekaterina, the Russian heroine of this story. This woman went through so much. I mean, just reading this alone, I'm thinking, by the time her life was almost over, she must have been exhausted. Do you know how old she was when she passed it? I missed
84.
Okay, she was only 84. And I say only because...
yes, I know. But
yeah, I know.
It doesn't sound so old.
Yeah, it's today. It's a whole different animal. When did you start writing this book? Uh-oh.
So, I've been working on it for a long time, but I really made it... Once I made a commitment to it, it took me about 3 years.
Wow.
But I didn't... My writing style is such that I write when the mood strikes.
Okay.
I do other things. If somebody calls, hey, Tom, do you want to go do X? Yeah,
yep.
okay.
Same way.
And I walk away from the computer and I stop.
Are you a multitasker? Kind of?
I don't know that you really can be.
Well, I'll have the computer on, the news, I'll be right...
Oh, it's all on, but I'm really just focused.
Yeah.
On whatever it is that captures my interest. So it took... Once we had this grandchild and I retired permanently, from full-time employment...
You retired early. Early.
Well, I retired twice.
Twice?
Well, yeah, I was 57 when I stopped working full-time.
Yeah.
Then at a so-called real job. Then there was 3 years where I did my storytelling. I did some teaching for a friend in another adult education program. And then I got this offer to go back to work at Mystic Seaport.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful because it suits my background.
Yeah.
And then I worked there for 10 years, and then we had this grandchild, and I stopped.
Unbelievable. Did you know in high school, were the teachers aware that you had this ability to write like this?
I don't know. I remember doing a number of projects that I really liked that required some research and writing. I think I did fairly well on them. I did pretty good in high school, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But nobody came to me and said, hey, you really...
I would think in English class you would have excelled. You know that you have to write essays?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I got a rude awakening. I made it to college, and I thought, I'm going to do great in English class. I was always acing it in high school. This professor gave us something. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I thought I went to this guy, and I said, what is this? I was humble about it, but I said, what is this? And he tried to tell me he had some kind of, couldn't tell you what his excuse was, but my whole outlook on that changed dramatically. I thought, what do I have to do to please this guy? It was spooky. Now, we're going to have to close, but I assume that there's another book. You've already got the next novel already all set. Not published yet, though.
No, you can go on my website, and there's a little blurb about it.
Okay, so eventually, maybe before Christmas?
It's called Mamberamo Gold.
Mamberamo Gold.
Mamberamo. And Mamberamo is a river in Indonesia.
Oh, how cool
On
is that?
Borneo. I've been to Indonesia. And so... there's gold there, and it's an adventure story. I think it needs a little tweaking, but it was my first effort.
Well, the holidays are coming up. This is a great time. I tell the authors, get out there. People love to give books as gifts. And do you think your next novel will be out before Christmas or maybe in the new year?
I think in the new year.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can't wait to read that as well as the children's ones. Ooh, I like kids' books.
They're fun. They really are.
Were you the youngest in your family?
I was the oldest.
You're kidding.
No.
Usually it's us youngest ones who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to stay young forever. That's great that you were the oldest and you maintain that sense of childlike, loving things like that. So we've been talking with Tom Brillat, and he has written the book Ekaterina, okay? And pick up a book, pull for a copy over at the Upton Library, right up the street. You're going to bring up a copy over there?
It sounds like I have to.
You don't have
sounds like
to.
I better.
Why not? Why not? It's just another free way to get it out there, guys. And we've got more coming up. Thank you, Tom, for being with us, for coming up from Rhode Island.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Is North Kingston the same as Kingstown?
So there's North Kingstown.
Yeah.
There is South Kingstown. There is the village of Kingston in South Kingstown. Rhode Island's classic New England, tiny little state with 39 cities and towns.
Be a little confusing for the mailman, wouldn't it?
Very confusing for the mailman. Yes, it is.
Better get a post office.
I live in Richmond. My mailbox is West Kingston.
Oh, okay. On that note, thank you for being with us. He's been a joy to talk with.
Yeah.
We'll have him back. We'll see you next time I'll be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.